Alright, today we're going to be starting a project that I call text art. So we're going to be focusing on the type tool, which is found here, and all the different ways you can modify your text and use it in a project creatively. So to get started, we're going to start a new project, and we're going to do something that's 8 inches by 8 inches. So here you can change from pixels to inch, and then the width and the height is going to be 8 inches, and then the dots per inch 300, sorry. And we're just going to create a plain white background. So this is just the canvas we're going to use today for our project. I'm going to actually import an image that's going to help with this process. So to import an image into your project, you click File, then you want to open and place something in an existing project. So we're going to use this bike image. I'm going to stretch this out to fill the work area, and then click the check mark to accept that. Alright, so we're going to try to recreate some components in this bike with text. So the first thing we're going to try is this horizontal bar here. It's a very easy thing to recreate. We're just going to use the type tool and place some text right here. So I'm going to click to start my text, and there's a few things that you can set right away. Actually, I should have done that before I clicked. So before you type anything, if you want to set up your text with a specific color, specific font style, you would do that first. So I'm going to choose a little font here. Let's just click that one. And then choose a color that's going to stand out. Let's do yellow. And then the rest of this we're going to talk about a little bit later. We'll just get started by typing. So I'm going to click there to start my type. And I'm just going to type frame across here. Alright, let me zoom in so you can see this. Alright, so now I want to adjust something. So if this is too spread out and I want to change that, there's more settings that you'll find in the character settings. So I'm going to click on over here the properties for the character. That should be something that is always checked, but if not, you can also find it here in the window options. So you can click on character and it will display the same thing. So here you have some of the similar settings for the font style and the type. Then you have also some size options. Alright, so I've already played around with this program, so the tracking has been increased. So if you want to change the tracking, that's the space between characters. So let's say I wanted it to fit exactly in that. I would have to play around with this value to get it to fit. The other thing you can modify as far as stretching goes, you can modify the stretch of the characters either to be taller or shorter, or wider or thinner. So here I can adjust this in or out. So those are two ways to modify the length of the text. Now I'm going to place the text where I want it. So one of the things you can do, as long as you're on the move tool, you could use your arrow keys to arrow down or up or over to get the placing correctly. Alright, so there's one example of what we're trying to accomplish. So we have some other straight lines here that you could recreate fairly easily. Let's go ahead and do the frame all the way around. So now that I have a pretty close size, I'm just going to create a new text layer. And this one I want to pan down, so I'm going to just start my text here, type some more frame. So I'm not sure how much I need because this is not in line with this. So before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and just accept that text. Click the check mark. And now I'm going to modify this by rotating it. So I'm going to go to the edit tools. And I like to use free transform because that just gives you all the options. So if you hover over one of the corners, you'll get a rotate symbol. You just rotate it around. Put it in place here. I can rotate it to match the angle here. I may need to zoom in a little bit to be able to see that rotation. So I'm trying to go parallel to that bar. Put this in place here. And then I'm going to zoom out. So this needs to be stretched out. So I'm going to use the character settings and let me pan over so I can see. Then I'm going to increase the tracking so that the characters line up with the end of that. Let's say about right there. Alright, I have a few other straight things that you could do, but now you know how to do it. So I'm going to move on to the next more complicated way to place some text. So that's the basic type tool. So you can type in a straight line, adjust the characters, rotate, resize, all that good stuff, change the color. Now we're going to try to type on a path. So we have some tires here we're going to try to recreate. So we're going to use the circle, which is the ellipse tool. And instead of making a shape, which usually has a fill color, let me go back and change that to a fill color. So I just want a path because I'm going to eventually type on that path. So what I'm going to do is click to start, change this to path. And then I'm going to hold down the shift key to keep it a perfect circle and then shift it over. We've done this several times in class. So I'm just making a circle, and I'm going to try to match the inside of the tire. Let's do that because the text is going to stick out. This is not a perfectly round tire, so that's alright. We're going to go with it. So here's my circle. And what I've done is I've created a path, and it doesn't show up here anywhere because it's not anything actually, it's just a path. So a path has no substance to it. It doesn't have a color, it's not attached to a layer, it's just a path. So the paths are found in the Path tab. And anything that is a work path basically means that it's a temporary thing that you can use. And if you don't use it and you start a different path, this current work path will go away. So if you want to save a work path, before you move on, you need to save it by renaming it. So I'm going to double click that and name this front tire. So now that this is saved, it's going to start a new list of layers here, so different path layers. Now I want to type on this, so the path is visible because it's selected here. If I deselect it, the path disappears. So I want to have the path selected so I can see it. And then I'm going to use the type tool and click somewhere on the circle to start some type. Oh, I still have this selected, so it's assuming I want to click inside that. So I don't want to do that, so I need to select a different layer. In Photopea, there's no way to deselect the layers, So normally there's a way to deselect layers, or if you just click in the gray area in Photoshop, it deselects layers. In Photopea, you have to have a layer selected. So while we're doing this, we're going to be selecting the background because that is not a shape and it's not text. So if we click to start something, it's going to assume we want something new. So I want some new text. I want to place it on this path. Oh, it's still going over there. So let's type some stuff and see what happens. So let's do the tire. Oh. So if this happens, which it does sometimes, you need to force the program to ignore the text. So I'm just going to basically turn these layers off so I can focus on this circle that I created. So let's see if now we got our text is now on the path, and we're going to type in tire. Oh, it's below the bike layers. Let's go ahead and put this up here so I can see it. Click back in here to keep typing. Oh. Let's see what's happening. Let's go back. This, it did not intend to happen. So I'm going to double click to get inside here, place my cursor inside, continue typing. That's enough there. Obviously I want this to be a different color. I'm going to do black on black is not going to do well as far as visibility right now, so let's do white. Then I'll change it to black later. And stylistically, I want a thicker font. So I'm going to go to my character settings and let's find something that's thicker, that's really thick. Let's do something like this. And then I want to try to do this all caps. So here are some settings. You have bold, italicized. This is all caps. So I'm going to click on this to make every character capital. Now I can play around with the size a little bit. Make it as big as I want to here. If I want the characters closer together, I could adjust the tracking. And let's say I still want to keep, I'm still on the type tool. Let's say I want to keep typing more tires. To fill this up. Alright, so now I have this filled up, and we're going to now click the character to close it so I can view my entire work area. And notice what happened. We have a text here that is on a path, and anytime you create something on a path that is attached to a layer, it basically claims that path and it makes a new one. So if I go to my Paths tab, now I have a text path that is in quotation marks tire, showing me some of the text that's in there. So this will automatically save, and I still have my front tire as a path. So now I have two paths, one that's attached to a text layer and the other one that is just a path that I saved with the front tire name. So now let's get a little bit more complex and say we wanted to place something inside here. So using the same circle, but rotating the text inside the circle. So let's go ahead and try that. Now I have this selected, so I want to deselect that by selecting a different layer that isn't shape related or text related. So I'm going to click on the bike layer. And now I don't have any paths selected. So none of these are selected, so no paths are visible. This path is connected to this text. So if I deselect the text, it's going to disappear. So here it is in the paths. If I deselect that and select something else, it disappears. But I always have this path because it's one that I saved. So I'm going to reuse this path, and to again not confuse Photopea about what I want to try to do next, I'm going to hide this text layer. I'm going to go make sure that I'm on the type tool, and I'm going to click here and place some text on this path again. Let's do the rim this time. So RIM. I'm going to be rotating this inside, so I'm going to type a little bit more so I have more to work with. Alright, so now I want to place this, instead of being on the outside of the circle, I want to place it on the inside. Let's go ahead and change the color so it's a little bit different. Let's do something silverish. Alright, so to modify the path, we're going to be using the select tools. So the path select tool is the one that when you use to modify this. And I'm going to zoom in. I don't know if this will get any larger, but we'll see. I think you can see it a little bit better here. So there's two things to take note of. This is a starting point for my text. And there's also an end point. So if I click here, change, that's the end point. Okay, here we go. We separated them. So if you don't change this at all, the end point and the beginning point are the same. So they're just right on top of each other. So in order to differentiate that, I'm going to just drag the end point away so that I can see the start point. So this is a circle, and this is more like a cross symbol. This determines where my text starts. So if I shift that around the circle, it's going to shift. And if I move from the outside to the inside of the circle, it's going to flip it upside down to be on the inside. Now that also means the controls are flipped upside down. So now I'm, instead of controlling the starting point of my text, I have now grabbed the end point of my text. If I move the end point too far, it'll start erasing some text. So you just want to make sure that that's far enough over to where you're not getting rid of anything. So now I can change the settings here in my character settings to fill up this area. And let's go ahead and increase the tracking a little bit. I'm going to reduce the size so that the tire is bigger. And then just increase the tracking to fill the gap. And then maybe stretch it just a little bit. It's a little bit tricky trying to get the exact setting with this. So let's try tracking. We're getting real close. It's close enough for now. Alright, so now I have a new text layer that was formed on the front tire path, and now it has its own path. It's connected permanently to that text layer. So now I'm going to turn on these things so I can see what we got so far. So let's say I wanted to add a little bit of space between the tire and the rim. So right now they're just too close to each other. Let me add, I'm going to add a black background so I can see the text. So I have a white background. Let's just do something else. Create a blank layer and then fill this. So we're going to edit and fill, and let's do a color. Oop, I just filled it with black. That's fine. So if I want to hide the bike layer and see this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Say I wanted to create a little bit more space between these two words. So I need to offset my text to be like a distance away from the path. So I'm going to select the tire and then go into the character settings. What we want to do is shift the baseline so that it's farther away from the path. So in this program you have a maximum of 10 pixels, and then you can't shift it anymore. So I'm going to shift it out and maybe do the same thing for the rim and the baseline, shift it inward. So the baseline shift is the distance away from the path. Alright, now I still have the path selected, and that will stay selected until I deselect it by clicking in the blank area there. But we're done using that, so I'm going to deselect it. Alright, let's move on to something that is custom. So we have here some handlebars. And there's no way to get this with a circle, so we're going to create our own path with the pen tool. So let's go ahead and get in here with the pen tool. We want to make sure that we are in the path mode and we're not going to be creating a shape. We're just going to be creating a path. And I want to make sure that I'm not on a text layer or any kind of shape layer. So I'm going to click here to start my path and drag out a handle. So click, hold, and drag out. And then I'm going to click here, drag out a handle, try to match that curve. And then click one time here. Then I want to get rid of that leading handle, so I'm going to Alt click. Oh, we have this handle here is going to cause an issue with that. Let's go back a step. So Control Z. So let's go ahead and place one here. Same thing there. Place one here. It's pulling it too far. So let's undo that. So I need to get rid of this leading handle. It's pulling too far. So I need to Alt click this. And then from here to the end of this is pretty much a straight line. So I'm just going to click here and then click here to end my handlebars. Now if you didn't like that shape, you want to redo it, you can, or you can grab the direct select tool and select the points that you want to modify. So, close enough. So now I have a path, and I need to save this path, or I risk losing it if I start a new path. So I'm going to double click where it says work path, name this handlebars. Now I have a path, and you can type on any path. You just need to be able to see it and not be on a different path. So you don't want to select any of these. You want to be on a layer that's an image layer or a background layer, or a blank layer would work too. And we're going to choose now the type tool. I'm going to click here to start my text, and we're going to type. So obviously the text is too big, it's too spaced out. I'm going to have to modify that. So I'm going to double click to see each of the characters, and let's just reduce the size till we get it inside that path. For some reason it closed the shape, so I'm going to have to try to shift this over. So before I do anything, let's try to fix that. So I need to go to my Paths Select tool, see if we can change the starting point for my text. Alright, there I have the starting point and the end point. So in this example, it's closing the shape even though the shape is not closed. So between here and here there's an imaginary line to close the shape. So just keep that in mind as you're creating stuff, that you can actually skip over and have your words divided between the two spaces. So if I wanted to shift this over, I could. I'm going to start it right here and adjust all of these settings. So the baseline has been adjusted. I'm going to bring that back in, and we have a lot of tracking here, so let's go ahead and turn that down. I can increase the size some. There we go. So I can shift the baseline inward if I wanted to. So I want it to be right in the middle. So let's go ahead and do a couple more with the pen tool. I'm going to grab the pen tool again, and I'm on a current layer that has a path. So if I start a path, it's actually going to add a path to this. Well, it might not because it's a text. Let's go ahead and see. So yeah, it's adding it to something. I think the front tire, or maybe the handlebars. So you can add paths to an existing path. That's fine. You can have multiple paths inside a path. But if you want to have each one labeled specifically, then so you can select it later on, you'll want to create a new path. In order to do that, you'll have to deselect any current paths that are selected. So let me undo that. So I want to go to my layers panel and make sure I have something selected that's not path related. So don't select any shapes and don't select any text. And now I have my two saved paths, the handlebars and the front tire. Those are always going to be there. They're going to be saved. So I'm going to deselect by clicking anywhere in the empty space here. And now if I click, I'm going to be starting a new work path. I'm going to click and hold and drag out this way. And then I'm going to click and hold here. So that's not extreme enough. It might work. So let's go ahead and just edit that with the direct select tool. want this to be all the way to the end. So now we have a nice path. So I want to save this, call it brakes. So now I have a path I can type on. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'll select this layer just so that my text appears above it. And then I'm going to grab the text tool, change the color here. Let's do blue. Then click to start. Alright, so now I want this to be a little bit of a different style. So I'm going to select the brakes layer and get to the character settings. Choose a different font style. Let's do something like this. It's still in all caps, so I'm going to go back and just toggle that off. And I'll increase the size. Decrease the tracking so I can get more characters in there. Alright, there's a good example of how to do that. So now I want to deselect the path. So I'm going to click anywhere out here. The only text path that's selected is the one attached to the current layer that I'm working on. So if I want to deselect that, I just got to move off of that. So now in my path panel, there aren't any paths selected. Alright, so we have done quite a bit here. So the important things to remember are that Photopea is not going to know which layer you're trying to work on. So in order to help with that process, it's best to hide any layers that would be in the way. So for example, let's say I wanted to add a spoke right here. Just a straight line. So I can now go into my paths, make sure I don't have anything selected, go into my layers, make sure I'm not on any existing path, and I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to try to place something here, and it's actually working, so that's good. So now I have a path, and then go back to my layers panel and type on this. So it's not sure where I want to go with the type tool. So that's the issue that we want to avoid. If there's any text in the area or an existing path, like this one here, it's going to assume that I want to type on that path, which I don't. So I'm going to just click on the X mark, and let's go ahead and make sure. So it wanted to select the tire layer and start typing on that path. So I'm going to hide that. I'm also going to hide the rim because that's really close to it. And now let's select the bike layer and see if we can type on this now. Alright, so now I'm able to type on that path. I should have named this. There we go. And then I can go into my text layer, and I should be able to start typing. And then change the color so I can see that. Go green. And let's go ahead and shift this into the middle. So the baseline shift. So I just created some new text and it wasn't on the path. Maybe it is. Let's see. Get on here. that is on the path. Shift it out down here. And I'm going to change the starting point if I can here. So I created a few extra layers when I was just clicking in random spots trying to figure stuff out. That sometimes happens. So you can either undo after you create a text layer that you accidentally created, or you could just drag it to the trash can here. So this is the concept for the project that I would like you to start on your own, is to choose some sort of text art. It doesn't have to be recreating a specific shape. It could just be random text art, whatever inspires you. You could use a Bible verse or a poem, or you could just use some random words. And the goal of this is to get you familiar with the type tool. So I'd like to see different font styles in your project, different font sizes. I'd like to see some text on paths. So you can either use the shape tools and then type on the shapes, or you can create your own custom paths. One easy way to create some text that has some arcs instead of using paths is you can warp a text. So let me just show you that really quickly here, somewhere on a blank area. So again, I want to be on a layer that doesn't already have text, and I'm going to click somewhere here, just type some random stuff. So one of the ways that you can modify text is by warping it, and this also allows you to stretch individual characters in kind of a creative way. So I have my text layer selected, and I'm going to click on the warp option. And the thing you want to choose first is a style. So these are the different styles that you have. And let me just pick one that's pretty drastic. So I'll do a flag wave. So this has a wave to it. And I can increase the bend if I want more of a drastic bend in either direction. The horizontal distortion is going to cause the beginning part to be slim. Shrink it. So it looks like it's like kind of rotating. Then here's the vertical distortion. So this is an easy way to modify some text where they've kind of created their own pattern, and then also given you the ability to kind of warp the text and stretch it out. So let's try another one, like a basic arc. So you can also use warp. It's a way to make some basic path shapes. And basically that's it. So it's a very open-ended project. I just want you to challenge yourself, be creative. You can search online for text art and get inspired that way, come up with a new idea. So there are going to be some parameters, specific ones related to this assignment that I'll post on Google Classroom. But for now, this is just an example of how to get started. All right, that's it.